What if time is not what you think it is? What if the past, the present, and the future are all equally real? And what if the time itself is not actually moving at all? Time controls almost everything in our lives. We measure it, we fear it, we feel it passing every second. A child becomes old, stars born and die, entire civilization rise and disappear. Everything seems trapped inside time. But here is the difficult part. Physics can describe how time behaves with astonishing precision, yet no one fully understands what time actually is. Is time a real physical thing, or is it simply the way conscious beings experience change? And if time had a beginning, what does that even mean? Because if there was a moment before time existed, then how could there be a before at all? For most of human history, time seems simple. The sun rose, then it set, the seasons changed, people aged, and from those repeated patterns, humans created calendars, clocks, and schedules. But notice something important. None of these things may actually measure time itself. A clock does not capture time, it only measures movement. The movement of hands, the vibration of atoms, the rotation of Earth around the Sun. And in a strange way, almost our entire experience of time is tied to Earth. Days exist because Earth rotates. Year exists because Earth orbits the Sun. Even our biological sense of time is shaped by sunlight, sleep, aging, and life on this planet. So, this raises an unusual question. Does time itself exist independently of us, or are humans simply interpreting change through Earth-based patterns? Because if absolutely nothing changed in the universe, would time still exist? This question has troubled philosophers and scientists for centuries, and the modern physics only complicated the question further. For centuries, scientists believed time was absolute. According to Isaac Newton, time moved forward the same way for everyone in the universe. A second on Earth would be the same as a second anywhere else. Time was treated almost like an invincible cosmic clock, flowing steadily in the background of reality. But in the early 20th century, Albert Einstein changed that picture completely. According to relativity, time is not separate from the universe. It is part of space-time itself. And according to relativity, space-time itself can bend, stretch, and distort. This means time does not pass at the same rate everywhere. Gravity affects time, speed affects time. The stronger the gravity, the slower time moves. The faster something travels, the slower time passes for it compared to someone else. And that is not science fiction. It has been experimentally confirmed many times. Even satellites orbiting Earth experience time slightly different than the people on the surface. Without correcting for those tiny distortions, systems like GPS would completely become inaccurate. So, modern physics force us to accept something deeply unfamiliar. There may not be one universal time for entire universe at all. Different observers can experience time differently depending on their motion and gravity. And once we accept that, the question becomes even deeper. Because if time can stretch, slow down, and behave differently depending on perspective, then what exactly is time in the first place? As difficult as relativity already sounds, modern cosmology pushes the question even further. Because, according to our current understanding of the universe, time itself may have had a beginning. We often imagine the Big Bang as an explosion that happened inside the space. But that is not really what physicists means. The Big Bang describes the rapid expansion of space-time itself, not an explosion inside the universe, but the beginning of the universe as we know it. And this creates a deeply uncomfortable question: what happened before the Big Bang? At first, the question sounds perfectly reasonable, but there may be a problem hidden inside it, because if time itself began with the Big Bang, then there may not have been a before at all. In other words, asking what happened before time began may be like asking what is north of the North Pole. The sentence sounds normal, but the concept itself may break down. And this leads to one of the most difficult conclusions in modern physics. Time may not be eternal. It may be part of the universe itself, with the beginning rather than an infinite past. But even that does not fully solve the problem, because if time began, why does it move only in one direction? Why does we remember the past but not the future? Why does a broken glass never spontaneously reassemble itself? Why does the universe seem to move from order to disorder? To answer these questions, we need to explore something known as the arrow of time. In everyday life, time seems to move in one direction, forward. We remember yesterday, not tomorrow. We grow older, never younger. A cup can fall and shatter across the floor, but the shattered pieces never suddenly raise back into air and rebuild themselves. So, why does reality seem to move from past to future? In physics, this is often connected to something called entropy. Very simply, entropy measures disorder. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy tends to increase over time. Order slowly becomes disorder. Stars burn their fuel, structure decay, living things age, and the universe appears to move in one overall direction. And this may be why time feels as though it flows forward. But there is another complication. Most fundamental laws of physics does not actually care about direction. In many equations, time can mathematically move forward or backward. Yet human experience feels completely one-sided. We experience a clear distinction between past, present, and future. But some physicists and philosophers argue that this distinction may not exist fundamentally at all, and that leads to one of the most philosophically difficult ideas in modern thought. What if the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously? Right now, the moment feels real. The present seems alive, the past feels gone, the future feels uncertain. But some interpretations of modern physics suggest something deeply counterintuitive. The universe may not experience time as a flowing sequence at all. Instead, all moments in time may already exist together. This idea is sometimes called the block universe. In this view, time behaves almost like a space. Just as all locations on Earth exist simultaneously, all moments in time may also exist simultaneously. The year 1500, today, and a moment 1000 years from now, all equally real within space-time. If this sounds impossible, consider this. Different observers in relativity can disagree about which events happen now. What feels present to one observer may already belong to the past or the future for another. And if present changes depends on perspective, then maybe the flow of time is not fundamental after all. Maybe consciousness is what creates the feeling of moving from one moment to the next. In that case, the passage of time may be less like a river flowing and more like a mind experiencing reality frame by frame. And that raises a deeply disoriented possibility. Perhaps the universe is not moving through time. Perhaps we are. As strange as time already seems, the universe becomes even more extreme around black holes. A black hole contains so much gravity that space-time itself becomes severely distorted, and according to relativity, the stronger the gravity, the slower time passes. This means that near a black hole, time could move dramatically slower compared to Earth. In theory, a person spending a short time near an extremely massive black hole could return to find that years or even centuries had passed elsewhere in the universe. So, in a strange sense, physics already allows a form of travel into the future, not through magic but through gravity and relativity. But traveling backward through time is far more difficult because the moment we imagine changing the past, paradox begins to appear. What happens if someone travels back in time and prevents their own existence? Would cause and effect begin to collapse entirely? Science fictions often explore these ideas. In Avengers Endgame, the characters explain time travel by suggesting that changing the past creates alternative timelines rather than rewriting the present itself. And interestingly, some real interpretation of physics also explore the possibility of branching realities or multiple histories. But at present, there is no confirmed scientific evidence that the human could actually travel backward through time the way movies imagine. And at the smallest scale of reality, the picture becomes even more uncertain. Modern physics is still divided between two enormously successful theories. General relativity explains gravity and space-time extraordinarily well. Quantum mechanics explain the microscopic world extraordinarily well, but the two frameworks still do not fully fit together. And until they do, our understanding of time itself may remain incomplete. Long before the modern physics began questioning the nature of time, human civilizations were already struggling with the same question. But not all traditions imagined the time in the same way. In Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, time is often understood as linear. History has real beginning, it moves forward, and it leads towards an end or fulfillment. But these traditions also contains another profound idea. Time itself belongs to the creation. In other words, God is not usually understood as a being trapped inside time the way humans are. Instead, God exists beyond time itself. This idea became especially influential in Christian philosophy through thinkers like Saint Augustine. When asked what God was doing before creation, Augustine argued that the question itself may be mistaken, because if time began with creation, then there was no before creation at all. And interestingly, modern cosmology arrived at a remarkably similar paradox centuries later. If space-time itself began with the universe, then asking what happened before the universe may not fully make sense. In Islamic theology, many classical scholars also describe time as something created rather than eternal. This means causality and temporal sequence belongs to the universe itself, not necessarily to whatever exists beyond it. But not all traditions imagine time as a straight line moving from beginning to end. In many Hindu philosophical traditions, time is often understood as cyclic. Reality unfolds through immense repeating cycles of creation, destruction, and renewal, not linear time but recurring cosmic time. And interestingly, some modern philosophical theories also explore whether the universe itself could move through repeating cycles. Buddhist thought approaches the question from another direction entirely. Instead of focusing mainly on where time began, some Buddhist philosophers question whether the self moving through time is ultimately permanent at all. The person you were years ago no longer fully exists. Your thoughts change, your body changes, even your memories slowly change. So, if everything is constantly changing, what exactly is moving through time? Across civilizations, humans reached very different conclusions: linear time, cyclic time, timeless eternity, or even possibility that our experience of continuity is partially an illusion. Different answers, but all confronting the same question. So, what is time? The honest answer is we still don't fully know. Physics can measure time with extraordinary precision. It can predict how time bends near gravity, how it slows at extreme speeds, and how it may have begun with the universe itself. But describing how time behaves is not necessarily the same as explaining what time actually is. Is time a fundamental part of reality? Is it an emergent property of change? Is the flow of time real, or only part of conscious experience? And perhaps the most difficult possibility to accept is this: maybe the universe itself is not moving through time. Maybe everything already exists within space-time, while consciousness experiences reality one moment at a time. For thousands of years, scientists, philosophers, and religious traditions has approached this question from different directions. Some imagined time as linear, others saw it as cyclic, some viewed eternity as existing beyond time altogether. Yet, despite all these perspectives, the uncertainty remains. Because time is not just something we study, it is the medium through which we experience existence itself. Every memory, every decision, every life, all unfolding inside something we still barely understand. And perhaps that is what makes time so fascinating. Not simply that it passes, but that we exist within it all.